The thing that you will need to know about this Big 12 schedule release, other than obviously if you're a fan of one particular team, you would want to go seek out your own team. But big picture, broad takeaway, the Big 12 kind of did away with rivalry week, more or less. You have the Territorial Cup. Arizona State will still be last week of the regular season, which has traditionally been reserved for rivalry week. The Big 12 stripped away a lot of it, and that has people freaking out. And I understand why. I definitely understand why. It seems like BYU fans in particular are not thrilled with this because it means the Holy War is on October 18th instead of at the end of November. I get it, and I'm with you guys, honestly, those of you that are upset about it. But I will say, I think the Big 12 is right on this one. Okay, so let's dive in. Look, first thing I will say, another point of contention people have with the schedule is that, like, this is the year when they released the schedule for the next 4 years. We saw that there were a number of rivalry games, or at least a couple rivalry games that would only happen 3 out of 4 years instead of happening every single year. People were very bothered by that. K-State, Iowa State being one of those. We're going to get K-State, Iowa State in week 0 this year. But once every 4 years, you're not going to get it. Baylor, Texas Tech is not happening this year. And it is a shame that especially this year of all years is when it falls, because I think that would be a great game this year. Like Texas Tech, Portal Kings, they should be competing for a Big 12 title. Baylor, based on the finish they had, 8-win regular season. Sawyer Robertson, red hot. Like a lot of guys coming back from that team, spending more now in the portal. I think that will be a phenomenal game. Well, it would be, but it's not going to happen. That is disappointing. And I do wish that the Big 12 would have found a way to make those happen. Having said that, I was not out with a pitchfork over it. I will survive not having K-State, for instance, play Iowa State once every 4 years. I don't think it is the end of the world. And I know that scheduling becomes difficult when you have this many teams in a league, which is a part of just the overall issue with realignment, right? But you do what you can. So I don't like that. And much like I would prefer to have those rivalries every single year, I would prefer to have rivalry week be preserved the way that it always has been. Like, I am a college football, for the most part, traditionalist, like most people are, and it's frustrating to see that so much of it has been stripped away. I understand why people are upset. It sucks. I have just come to a place of acceptance where it's like, I know that a lot of things are not going to be the way that I would really like them to be in the sport. I'm going to just try and make the best of it and enjoy what I can from it. And not having traditional rivalry week falls under that for me. Like if it were up to me, I'd go back to when it's the late 90s and Keith Jackson is calling your 2:30 ABC game every week. That's the biggest game of the week. I guess we can make it BCS era at that point, like early BCS era. That's how we're determining a national champion. You know, the conferences certainly make a hell of a lot more sense geographically. I'd love to hit the reset button and go back to all of that, which includes, by the way, rivalry week being reserved for the biggest rivalry games. Like, one of the things that I missed the most, rivalry week, is Colorado-Nebraska. I grew up on that game, man. Like watching Colorado-Nebraska at the end of the regular season every year. 100% would love to see it. Last year, Colorado-Nebraska played early, right? Like the last couple of years, they have played early. It's better than no Colorado-Nebraska, so I'm at least taking solace in that. We're not going to get the Holy War during rivalry week, but at least we have it. We don't get to see Bedlam anymore. So, you know, if you could stick Bedlam in the middle of October, I would take that over what we have now, which is not having Bedlam. So some of this is just me already adapting my mindset and attitude toward the new reality in college football. I will admit that. I also do think, though, that there is some sound logic here from the Big 12 and what I imagine is probably happening with this. Okay, because if you're taking some of your best games, be it like your best, most fierce rivalries, if it's K-State, Iowa State, if you're going to say it is Baylor, TCU, if you're going to say, obviously, the Holy War, well, Holy War being front and center, especially, goodness, after what we saw last year and all the sparks that flew during and after that game. If you put it during rivalry week, it is a guarantee it's getting overshadowed nationally. There's no chance that it's not, because you'll have Ohio State, Michigan, you'll have the Iron Bowl. Just every major rivalry game is already taking place that weekend. So it's going to get drowned out. You virtually have no chance at it not getting drowned out on a national scale. If you put the game on October 18th, there's at least a chance that it could become featured game of the day or one of the most featured games of the day. A chance of getting it a little bit more national spotlight and attention, which equates to more eyeballs, which is obviously the ultimate currency here and the ultimate goal. So that's probably, if I'm just going to lay it out like this, like you're looking at, you got a 0% chance on rivalry week because that's just built in and the way the rest of college football is going to go with having those rivalry games there that weekend, or I don't know, 5% chance, 10% chance, whatever you'd want to label it at, that it would get some legitimate real national run or attention on October 18th. That's the gamble that you're making. And there is no gamble if you have it during rivalry week. It will satisfy the traditionalists. It will satisfy all of our typical natural instincts as fans. And I understand that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. But if you're talking about business standpoint, dollars and cents, what you have to do, I feel like a lot of us, I know I have certainly accepted this reality. We have talked about it ad nauseum on this channel over the last 4 years. But the Big 12 has to do things differently than everybody else. The Big 12 is going to have to do things differently than the Big 10 or SEC. If you try and play them at their game and do it the same way, you're just not going to beat them. You know, it's like Mike Leach when he took over at Texas Tech. If he were going to try and take on Texas, doing it the exact same way that they're doing, pro-style offense, recruiting, just trying to recruit the best five-star talent on rivals, probably not going to beat Texas at that game. But if you all of a sudden go to this crazy air raid offense that nobody has seen, doesn't know how to defend, recruit different athletes that fit that, well, now all of a sudden you're talking. You're doing something differently. You gotta be a little bit Mike Leach here. And I know it's not always fun. It's not always something we love, but it's at least giving it a shot. It's giving it an effort to do it a different way that could be more beneficial to you. I think this is one of those things that it will be frustrating every step of the way for the fans when things like this happen, because it's not what any of us really, truly deep down want. But it is what the Big 12 is pretty much forced into trying. And some of this I know will come down to there are fans and people that have frustrations with Brett Yormark. I mean, shoot, you saw Starter 179, great Big 12 fan, great Texas Tech fan, but he and I were going back and forth a little bit on the last live show on Sunday about what happened with JT Toppin in the Texas Tech game and frustration that Yormark's not doing enough. And, I'm sure Tech doesn't feel great about that now because there's been no statement or no, punishment that we know of anyway, anything like that that's happened. And there are people that are frustrated with hey, this is clearly it's not Brett Yormark's strong suit, the actual ins and outs. I would call it more like the X's and O's of running a conference. He's great with the big picture stuff, great with being the CEO, but he's not the X's and O's guy. Now, you need to hire great coordinators. If we're furthering this coach analogy, you need to hire great coordinators if you're going to be the great CEO guy. And maybe the Big 12 hasn't, some people would tell you, hasn't done well enough with that yet. I think they're getting better. But that's not really what he's here for or what his strong suit is. Unfortunately, it pales in comparison in terms of the overall significance to the health of the league. That stuff, the quote unquote X's and O's here, pales in comparison to the importance of landing the big picture CEO stuff, which is what he is good at. And this is a part of it. This is a part of it. So I feel like I'm just dishing out a little bit of reality there for you, unfortunately. But I understand if you don't like it. This is one I'm not going to fight you too hard on it if you're complaining about it and you don't like it, because I get it. I get it. And deep down inside, I am with you. I will forever pine for what the college football of my childhood was. I wish we were still there, but we're just not. And if you're a Big 12 fan or an ACC fan, by the way, you're just going to have to accept that. Okay, so people aren't happy about rivalry week getting ditched by the Big 12 in what I believe to be a gamble for better attention, TV coverage, more eyeballs for your league by spreading out some of those games the rest of the calendar. By the way, October 18th is going to be an interesting one because TCU Baylor, which I think is another one of the great rivalries in the conference, TCU Baylor is going to be there as well on that same date, October 18th. You know,